Sorry, that's me on YouTube. I just have to mute the sound. Yeah, I'm gonna have to start coming like really early just to make sure that everything's working, because this is like the second week and stuff just doesn't work. Oh, wait, sorry, my fault. Okay, I gotta find out where a signal is. HDMI, nope, not there. HDMI, maybe. Come on, give me some love. There we go. Hey. But I don't want you to look at me because you're looking at me. I want to look at my PowerPoint. But the computer is not allowing me into my file. Okay, fine. So chalk and talk, as they say. The wonders of the modern world. All right, it's good to see you. I want to pray, Holy God, that we're together. I hope we're all doing well. Okay, especially with the things that are going on, and I pray that God will bless us as we learn about what is religion, the search for God, the quest for God that human beings have, or as we could say, the search for ultimate reality. People reach out for it, they want to interact with it. And so I pray, Holy God, that you will pour out your grace upon us in your Son, Jesus, so that while we search for you, we may also find you. Amen. Okay, where did I stop? I was talking about Paul in Acts of the Apostles when he goes to this place called Lystra, this town called Lystra, and he's talking to the people, and in the midst of talking to them, he heals a man who apparently was crippled, and the people go crazy. Yes, the people get all excited. They think that Paul and his companion Barnabas are gods. They think Paul is the god Hermes, yes, the messenger god. And they want to offer sacrifices. And Paul and Barnabas say, no, don't do this, because it's not the truth. But what's the message that, at least I felt I could take away from reading it, was that wherever people are in their search, God loves them and takes care of them. Because Paul is talking to non-Jews, pagans, you could say. But as you might have read in the reading from the textbook, Robinson and Rodriguez, they say that, pagan has kind of a pejorative sound nowadays and stuff like that. I don't know if that's totally true, because how many pagans do you bump into? It's like, don't call me a pagan. A lot of the old pagans are long gone. Although there is something called neo-paganism, which is not really paganism, but they're kind of like resurrecting the old gods in a way in some areas of the world. So I'll use the word pagan just for a general catch-all, meaning those who are not Jews or Christians, and I don't mean it in any negative sense. It's just a term, so I don't have to keep explaining it in take a paragraph to explain what I mean by it. Okay, so they're talking to pagans, and these are non-believers from the point of view of Paul and Barnabas. Yet Paul points out that God loves them, that their belief system is what it is. Paul doesn't agree with it. But he points out how God, he gives them very concrete examples of God's love. He doesn't philosophize with them. He says, look at the world. God gives you the seasons. Presumably the people hearing him were mainly farmers, I would assume, because that's where he goes. That's his example. He gives the season. And the crops of the field, the food that you get, is given to you out of goodness and love. God's good. And that's the God that they're talking about to them. So wherever people are in their search, even if from the perspective, say, of the Catholic Church, it might be the wrong path, or a path that is not correct, God loves and takes care of us. People may still have faith, even though they understand God in the quote-unquote wrong way. I mean, this pagan gentleman was just lying there, a cripple, a lame man. He couldn't walk. He was injured. He had a disability. But Paul could sense that this man has faith. He has the will to believe, even in a God he's maybe have never heard of, the Jewish God. He'd never heard of this. So even if people might say, well, they don't believe the right things. Okay, that's fine. But the thing is, it's a they, it's a person. It's a human being who's doing the believing. And that's where the value lies. Beliefs are important too. But where the value lies, where God is not interacting with beliefs. We're not a bunch of walking beliefs. We're not a walking catechism of the Catholic Church. He's dealing with me, Matthew Dunn. So when truth is found, the faith or the belief a person might have helps that person to recognize and accept it. This person had the faith, listen to Paul, and is like, yeah, there's something there. And that opens the door. The faith is there, even if maybe not, maybe focused on what Paul would say were false gods. The faith was there, but now when he hears about the true God, Paul's God, the door is opened wider. In fact, it's thrown open so he can be healed. I'm going to get out of here can you still see that? Yeah. I'm going to get out of here and see if I try again, I can somehow get back in. All right, that's not even right-clicky, isn't working. Okay, well, I guess that's just going to be the way it is. So Paul, now there's a different, that's when Paul and Barnabas are in Lystra, okay? Then there's a different scene, which we read in Acts of the Apostles, I believe it's chapter 17, where Paul is in a city. He's not in the countryside. He's not amongst apparently country folk. He's among city folk. He's in Athens, okay, which is still there in Greece. The city of Athens is an ancient city. It's still inhabited. Oh, yeah. And Paul goes there and he's walking around, and it kind of tells you what his opinion is. It says that Paul was angry. Literally in the Greek, his spirit was provoked. The spirit within him was irritated. Why? From seeing all the idols. He was walking around Athens and there was a statue to this god, a statue to that god, statue, all these idols. And remember, he's a Jew, so he hates these things. Remember the letter of Jeremiah. Look at these things. These things are not gods. How could they be gods? So his spirit kind of burns within him. He's irritated. He's angry with seeing a city that's so full of idols. And again, the English doesn't capture the literal Greek that Luke uses in Acts. When Luke says more than just it was a city of idols, it was full of idols. Like everywhere there were idols. They were sprouting like weeds. Okay, so the word he uses in Greek is more emphatic than just to say, well, it was just, there were just a lot of statues, And it was full of them, like cockroaches. Right? So Paul does not like what he sees. He hated the idols. He did not hate the people. The people he wants to talk to about this. He talks to people. And eventually he's brought to this place called the Areopagus. Areopagus, which I will write down. Well, maybe. You never know. I might get lucky. You never know. Let's see if I go down here. Now that's unspecified. Doesn't seem to be. Cruiser blades seem to work. And then we'll see. He goes to a place called the Areopagus, the hill of Ares. Ares, the god, which is dedicated to a god, Ares, the god of war, and the Greek understanding of the divine beings. Areopagus, the hill of Ares. And the Romans called him Mars, hence terms like martial law, court martial, okay? These are things that deal with war, okay? Military. martial. So it comes from the god Mars. So when you say court martial or martial law, you're actually referring to the god Mars, even though you don't know it. Mars, Marcus. So Aries is still of the god Aries, where people would meet, the intellectuals would meet, the eggheads, if you will, would meet to discuss matters and investigate matters, especially in regards to religion. And they were almost like a court in a way. They were kind of like, how would you put it? The judges of the tradition. They were kind of like the conservators in a way of the religious beliefs of the Greeks. So when something new came into town, blew into town, and someone is now talking about, Mithras or something like that, some god never heard of, they might invite them to the Areopagus to discuss it. And if they didn't like what they heard, they might assign penalties, like say, you get out of our city, you're exiled, we don't want you to preach anymore, whatever this message is. And so that's kind of a backdrop to what's going on with Paul. It's not all just happy, we're all sitting down and we're having a little conversation. If they didn't really like what Paul was saying, there could have been consequences. He could have been told to leave the city if he would not stop talking about this foreign god. Or spreading views that they didn't like. So it was, in a sense, a court. Not still. Nope. So while Paul hated the idols, he recognized them for what they were. They were examples of a human being's search for the true God, the unknown God. They revealed the human search for God, who even the Greeks, in Athens at least, admitted they didn't know. Why? Because Paul starts out talking to them. He says, I see you Greeks are very religious, or I should say you Athenians are very religious. In fact, you're so religious that when I was walking around your beautiful city, I even saw an altar that was dedicated to the unknown God. So you recognize that there's even stuff, there are so many gods, there might be gods you don't know about. So you still have to have an altar to them, because if you don't worship them, that unknown God might get angry, might hurt you, whatever. Now, for a Jew like Paul, this is preposterous. This is laughable. There are so many gods that you forget some of them. You can't remember them all. And yet the gods all have to be appeased, otherwise they get angry. So just to hedge their bets, the Greeks have an altar to the unknown God. And Paul, being a smart rhetorician, a smart speaker, says, this is the God I'm here talking about. I'm here to tell you about the unknown God. Ooh, so that's interesting. Let's listen to what this Jew has to say. And these are educated people. Now, when Paul opens and says, I see you're very religious, again, you have to look at the Greek that Luke is writing. It's actually sarcasm. And you don't really get this in the NABRE, the Bible translation we have. It's not a bad translation. It's just, it could be interpreted positively. It doesn't have that sarcastic edge, which is really what the word means. It's like you are more religious than anybody, almost to a fanatical extent. So there's a play here. And this was a rhetorical device. When you were a speaker, if you read ancient texts about how to do public speaking and stuff like that, they would say sometimes you want to do that. You want to use a little bit of sarcasm or wit, a little bit of mockery on your audience to get their attention, whether good or bad. It might be good, like, he's going to tell us about the unknown God. I'm interested. But it also might be, hey, don't make fun of us. Oh, you're very superstitious. Yeah, those are fighting words, Paul, but I got your attention. So I see you're very religious. Is this doing anything? So now I'm going to talk to you about the unknown God. He points out that there's a contradiction in their religiosity. They are very religious to the point of admitting that they don't know what they're religious about. There's an unknown God. And that's who Paul's going to preach. And he's leading up to, he never mentions the name of Jesus. If you remember the story, he never mentions Jesus, but he's clearly talking about Jesus. He starts talking about this man whom God has sent to be the judge of the living and the dead. So with Paul, his message is that all things have changed. With Jesus, things have changed, not just for the Jews, because Jesus is their Messiah, their Savior King, but even for non-Jews. The situation has changed in Paul's view. Before Jesus, one could say, God could overlook the fact that people didn't know about him or didn't know him correctly. But now God has spoken through his son, Jesus. And so that's kind of like what Paul is getting at the very end when he starts making this argument that Jesus will come against the judge of the living and the dead, meaning not just of the people who are alive now, but he's saying the people who have died before, and the people who will die, and the people who will live. So Jesus, if he can judge the living and the dead, all those who have lived, all those who will live, everyone, that means for Paul that Jesus is the ultimate standard. He's the ultimate standard. He's the one who's going to judge. He is the response to humanity's search for God. God has responded to the search by sending Jesus to the Jews. Men and women reach out, they grope, and remember he uses that word, people might search and grope, and the word in the Greek that Luke uses is more like a man groping in the dark, There ever been like, well, maybe they don't do them anymore, but they're kind of popular back in the 2000s. Maybe you went to them, when you were younger. They had like those places you could go where you could go inside dark rooms and shoot at each other and stuff like that. Or puzzle rooms where you go inside a room and you have to feel around and find clues to get out. Right? That's kind of like the thing. You're in a dark room and you're trying to feel. Now watch where you feel because there might be other people in the room. Okay? I'm just saying, you put a bunch of people in a dark room. Lawsuits. I'm just kidding. Never happened to me. Anyways, so, no, I'm serious. All right, move on, Mr. Dunn. Oh, my friend, here, let me consult you for a moment. But that's the meaning of the Greek word, like a man or a woman in the darkness searching. Yes, but out of that darkness, an arm is reached out. And that hand is Jesus. So both Jew and Gentile, here's Paul, a Jew, he's talking about both Jew and Gentiles are offered salvation through this Jew, Jesus. How is that proven? Where's the proof? You want the probatio, you want the proof, you want the pudding, right? And for Paul, the proof of this, because Jesus could just be another wise man, another holy man, whatever, he could be anybody. But for Paul, the proof that this is true is that though Jesus was killed and died, God rose him from the dead. God proved it to his followers who had lost faith, by the way. They didn't continue believing in Jesus after he was killed. We'll learn about that when we talk about Christianity as a world religion. But because God raised Jesus from the dead, it proved that he was what he said he was, or what Paul believed he was. Now, that was a proof to Paul. That was not a proof to the members of the Areopagus. In fact, that was the wrong thing to say, because if you remember from the story, what happens? They all get up and say, okay, we're out of here. Because resurrection was the worst argument. Resurrection was kind of like zombie land. No one wanted to be raised from the dead. In the ancient Greek or Roman world, that was not a good thing. What, you're going to come back into the same corrupt body? I'm going to come back into the same old fat body? And go, well, I'm back from the dead. Not that death was a good, being dead was a good thing either. The place Hades where people went was this kind of dark, windy, sad place. But you didn't want to go there. But you also didn't want to come back to the same body. As I said, it was kind of like zombie land. So when Paul was talking about like, this is a good thing, hey, Jesus rose from the dead, it blows their mind. They're like, this is disgusting. And so they leave. They say, this is ridiculous, what you're saying, and we're going to leave now. Goodbye, Paul. And they do. Except a few of them do say, hey, we want to hear a little bit more, and a couple become believers, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. The resurrection. Now, what is the resurrection? I've been mentioning it. I don't want to assume that everyone knows what it is, but it is a religious belief, and it's the event. If I gave you a definition, which I do, it's on the PowerPoint, which if you downloaded it, you can look at, but I'll read you the definition. The resurrection simply comes from the Latin resurrexo, which means to rise up. Resurrexo simply means to stand up, to rise up. Let me give it another try. Da, 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 da. Actually, I wonder, might be just as simple as this. Let's see. But resurrexo simply means to stand up or to rise up again. And so resurrection, literally the rising up, is for Christianity the event, and I'm using my definition just to make sure that I remember it, is, oh, okay. No, that's actually not what I think it's on. I'm not sure that that's on the PowerPoint. Okay, the event in which Jesus, or Jesus of Nazareth, I'm sure I'm going to move this off here. Back down here. It says Rexo. Okay, that's right. Yes. Rise. Whoops. To rise. Stand up again. Okay, in which Jesus, after his death, was raised physically back to life. I should say, actually, we say brought. You could say raised, but was brought back to physical life, or brought back physically to life. Bless you. And brought back to physical life. I guess how I'll do it. Okay, so it's the event when basically the body of Jesus of Nazareth is brought back to life by God. So that's what Paul is referring to when he refers to this event called the resurrection. And for him, that changes everything. That makes Jesus more than some holy or wise man or some political revolutionary, possibly. It gives significance to his whole ministry, his whole several years of teaching and gathering followers. Okay. Da, 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 da. There we go. This is so far so good. Yay, there we go. Okay, so let's see what the definition really was. There we go. Not good. Okay. Not sure. Yes, there's the picture of Lystra that I got of the town. That mound that you see in the background is where we believe that the ancient city of Lystra was. And here's a picture of the Areopagus, this crop of stone, this little stony hill where Paul, if you believe it historically, spoke to this group of educated individuals that were members of this Areopagus. This is the Hill of Ares in Greece. So as you can see, people still go there and you can see it. And the resurrection. Okay, here's my better definition. I say the event, but the belief that after his death and burial, Jesus was brought back to life physically by an act of God. Okay, so it's a fuller definition than what I gave you there. But the meaning is the same. His body was brought back to life. He was fully dead, but his body was brought back to life. Now, that was the Bible. Let's move on to the Catholic Church's understanding, the readings that we had from some church documents that we read. Godwin. And actually, yeah. Let's go. There we go. Let me see if I can get my video going here. Okay, let's make sure the sound was working. Okay. Now the readings that we had, looking at church documents, the readings that we had, oh yes, interesting, were two of them were taken from this event, another event, historical event called the Second Vatican Council, and one of them is taken from a Pope St. John Paul II. Okay, so I'll talk first about the two documents and just give some historical background to what I'm talking about. I'll get to that in a moment. The Second Vatican Council happened in the 1960s. It happened from 1962 until 1965. And so this is just I think a news reel showing the opening of the council. I don't know if it's in English or not, I forget, but we will soon see. Vaticanum Secundum. No, it's going to be in Latin. RAI is Latin, or it's going to be in Italian, excuse me. RAI is Italian television.
Arrivano come gatti da quello stesso spirito che menzionato li sottrasse alla prima paura.
If you can't understand Italian, if you can, great. Just watch, see the event unfold.
11 ottobre 1962, finalmente è arrivato il gran giorno. 2700.
Did freeze on me, my friend? Oh, yes, yes. Why not? Let's see. Why not? Well, at least you got to see a little bit of the bishops attending the council. They're going to show them marching down. They marched all the way down outside this huge church called St. Peter's Basilica. Then they marched inside the church where there were basically stands set up where they were able to sit, had little desks, and they would have shown that. But let's see, it's frozen, or if I can maybe get it back. If not, I'll just go back to my PowerPoint. Nope, doesn't look like it wants to do it. Okay, go back to the PowerPoint. Here you go, the information, the dates, as I said, 1962 to 65. Officially, its title is the Second Ecumenical Council of the Vatican. That's its official long title, the Second Ecumenical Council of the Vatican. But more commonly, that is just called Vatican, the Second Vatican Council, or for short, Vatican II. Second Ecumenical Council of the Vatican. Whoops. Vatican, or as most commonly called, is Vatican II. Why Vatican II? Because there was a Vatican I back in the late 1800s, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm focused on this, 1962 to 1965. It's called by this guy, Pope St. John the 23rd. You can see his picture there with his papal crown, because of course he's also a head of state. I mentioned the papal states before. Vatican City is its own country. It's a remnant of the papal states of the Middle Ages. So he wears that crown. Popes don't really wear these crowns anymore. I shouldn't say they don't really. They don't wear them anymore, even though they are still technically heads of the city-state of Vatican City. And he was Pope. This is not the years that he lived, okay? 1958 to 63. That's I don't think he was 5 years old when he died, but he doesn't. If so, you know, he does have a medical condition of some sort. If he was 5, that's what he looked like at 5 years old. That was a hard 5 years, baby. Yeah. No, he was Pope from 1958 until 1963, where if you look at the dates, you say, well, Dr. Dunn, does that mean he died? Well, yeah, he died after the first year of the council. And so they had to elect another guy who continued the council, and that was a big question. Will he or won't he? You know, will he continue it? Will he just stop it? No. This next guy took the name of Paul VI, and he continued the council. And you can see when he lived from 63 and until way after the council, 1979. Both are considered saints by the Catholic Church. They were considered holy men. And so those were the popes of the council. Why is it called the Second Ecumenical Council of the Vatican? Because it was a universal council. You can have local councils all the time. Okay, the United States Bishops of America, United States Bishops of America, the bishops of the United States meet every year. I think it's always in November, if I remember correctly. And that's a council. I mean, the bishops come together to talk about things. But when all bishops of the world, or for the most part of the world, come together, it's called ecumenical, a Greek word which means universal, the universe. The Greek word that's underlying ecumenical means universe, the universe, everything. So it's a universal or an ecumenical council. Interestingly enough, just as a little tidbit, a piece of trivia, that's what the word Catholic means as well. The word Catholic means universal. So ecumenical, Catholic both mean the same thing. The Catholic Church is seen to be the universal church. It includes all peoples and cultures. A council is just a meeting, okay? That's just simply what a council is. There's no particular religious meaning attached to the word council, okay? And in a lot of religions, they simply use common everyday terms to describe what they're doing, but they add this element of ultimate reality to it, of sacredness. So a council, in the sense meant here, the Second Vatican Council, is a meeting, yes, but it's specifically a meeting of bishops. And when bishops get together, they're really looking at two things. They're looking at teaching and discipline. They're looking at belief and practice. Teaching, belief, matters of belief, and discipline, which would discipline not in the sense of, you did something wrong, so now I have to discipline you. But discipline in the sense of practices. How are we living our beliefs out? Okay, and usually councils, at least in the history, they're not very frequent. But usually when they are called, it's usually because there's a problem. there seemed to be a problem. This pot is being stirred by someone or some group or something, or there's a question that the bishops can't come to an agreement on, so they need to come together to think and to talk and to pray about it. Okay, so where did this council meet? I mean, I told you it met in Vatican City. It's this place called St. Peter's Basilica. Actually, I don't know if I have a picture of that, but we would have seen it in the video. Let's just see, a video is still not doing nothing. Let's just see. Yeah, still doesn't want to do anything. Okay, fine. Let's try this. I'm trying to get back to Google Chrome so I can just show you a picture of what it looks like if you haven't seen it before. All right, let's end the process. Just go back. This. That's interesting. Is it just me, or is it like, have I become invisible? Oh, you know what? I think it's like behind me, right? It's like time-wise behind what I'm doing. I think that's what's going on. All right, I gotta head over to the library after this because I have to vent to these people. They won't see me coming because this is like, unacceptable. Anyways. Okay. St. Peter's Basilica. No, that's not it. There it is. Well, there's the front of it on Wikipedia, but I want to get a fuller picture of it. No, I don't want to see that. Don't they have any, actually, let me go. These are not very good pictures. Trying to get like a top-down view, an aerial view. Well, that's actually picture from. But you're getting an idea of what it looks like. These are all pictures of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. I was looking for an aerial view. This looks like about as good as I'm going to get. Yeah, I got it. Pictures of the interior, the main altar. Again, I'm looking for the picture that they were just showing on Google. There it is. Okay. So, I mean, this is a picture that's taken from the rooftop of the church. So you're on top of the church looking outwards at the big courtyard that's in front. Okay. So, okay, whatever. But I think, the other pictures you could see the front of the building. Here's the front of the building. That's just sending me back to Wikipedia, but whatever. So this is the building in which they held this council. They stuffed all these bishops in there. And roughly over the 4 years that the council met, you had roughly between 2,400 to 2,600 bishops at any one time. So around that number, in case you're curious how many bishops actually participated, just about all the bishops in the world. I believe the first 3 years, it was just over 2,400. And then the last session, the last year in 1965, they pushed it over 2,600 bishops showed up. So where did it happen? If I asked you on a quiz, like where did it happen? I'd say it happened, technically it happened in Vatican City, yes? Vatican City, that's where it's this is located, this church is located within the city-state of Vatican City. Go back here, I believe they show you a map. There it is, right there. They show you the map of Vatican City. You see what I'm showing you? And this tiny bit, I forget, it's very, very small. It's not even like, it's like a square mile. It's a very small country, but right smack in the middle, basically, is this big church, St. Peter's Basilica. Vatican City is within the larger environs of the city of Rome. So you could say Rome. Where did Vatican II meet? In Rome. You're correct, but technically you're not correct. Technically, it met in a separate country called Vatican City. So that's where they met, in that church. Yeah, and it's not going to let me back into that, so I can't even get to the PowerPoint. Maybe if I pull it out again. Da, 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 da. Okay. Here's the PowerPoint. All right. Now, I'm not going to tell you everything about the council. They talked about a lot of issues, but issue that came up, which was kind of unique for Vatican II, about the church's relationship to other religions. The church hadn't really done that before in previous councils, but it had become an issue, so they felt they needed to address it. And so there were two documents that I chose. I could have thrown in a third one, but I guess I decided it's not necessary. It was in the catechism reading anyways. If you read the catechism, they quoted from this third document called Lumen Gentium. But I gave you two documents, one called Ad Gentes and the other called Nostra Aetate. One on the missionary impulse, the missionary activity of the church, and the other on the relationship of the church to other religions. So both of them were issued in the final session, 1965. So they came late, very late in the council. And Ad Gentes, its official title, is the Decree on Missionary Activity of the Church. Don't worry what a decree is. What's the difference between a decree and a declaration? I mean, there are shades of difference between what these things are. And if you're curious, you can come up after class and I can quickly tell you. But just know that that's what the official title is. Shorthand, it's referred to as Ad Gentes, as you see here at the bottom. Latin, because in order to, so you don't have, like with the word pagan, so I don't have to keep saying over and over again, the decree on the missionary activity of the church, the decree on the missionary activity of the church, the decree of blah, 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 blah. The common practice is to take the first 2 or 3 Latin words of the text, because they're all written in Latin, and to use those as a shorthand way. So when I refer to Ad Gentes, this document is what I'm referring to, okay? And you might have to switch it up, because sometimes, documents will have the same Latin, the same first two words. So you might add the third word just to distinguish it, from something else. Just as, as an example. But in this case, the first opening words are Ad Gentes in the Latin. And here we have a quotation. Would anyone like to read from this quotation? It's from Ad Gentes number 7. Anybody? Because I'm not going to read it. I already read it. I don't want to read it again. I don't want to do twice the work. All right, look at it then. I mean, this is not the only reading. So remember, just a caution when the quiz comes, the next quiz, this will be on it. And not just from number 7, but I think we also read from number 3 and number 9. You had to read all of Nostra Aetate. For example, in Ad Gentes number 3, how does it describe human religions? It describes humanity's religion as, and these are the non-Christian religions. It's talking about everything other than Judaism and Catholicism. We'll get to why not Judaism in a moment, but all the world's other religions other than Judaism or Catholicism are seen as acts of education. They're kind of instances of education leading to the true God, preparations for hearing the message about Christ. Remember, this document is about missionary activity. It's about going out to, convert, not forcibly convert people, but it's talking about this sense of self that the Catholic Church has of being sent by Jesus, and not just being sent. Jesus does send his disciples out to go tell people about me. Jesus wants them to tell the world about him. Mission, being sent, that's what mission means. Missio, to send out, to be on a mission. So the church is sent out. So how does it view the human religions? They are kind of like a school in a way. They teach us good stuff. They teach us to look for the truth and to want the truth. They help us, mankind's religions help us recognize beauty and goodness and the desire for happiness, for fulfillment. These are good things, which is kind of a revolutionary thing, because before that, there was a very negative view towards anything that was not Judeo-Christian. Gentes talks about how God has intervened in history. The human religions are human religions, the creations of men and women, to show forth their religious experience, their experience of ultimate reality as they found it. But for the church, God has intervened in human history. That's the difference between, say, Judaism and Christianity. These are examples of God's intervention into human religious history. In fact, he comes in the flesh. How that happens is another question, and it will be discussed during Christianity, but not now. That God wanted to be with us. It wasn't enough that God is just up there being God. God wants to be with humans, which meant becoming one of us. It was not enough to be our creator and Lord. God wanted to be our brother and friend. And even more mysteriously, a servant. Because usually in religions, humans serve the gods. It doesn't go the other way around. The gods might do something for you. In fact, in certain religions, you can compel the gods to do things for you through magic or through certain practices. But that doesn't change the relationship. The gods are still not there as your servant. Whereas Jesus, who says he's the Son of God, says, I have come to be a servant. So from the perspective of the Catholic Church, when it looks out at world religions, as we will start doing later this week with Hinduism, it sees itself as God's initiative as opposed to a purely human response to God's presence in the world. So AG 7, Ad Gente 7. God wishes that all people should be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. Well, what is truth? Truth is the agreement of the mind with reality. It's the agreement or conformity of our intellects with what the world really is. If I look out the window, as I'm doing now, and say, look how hot it is out. I think I'm going to go out and put on some shorts and a t-shirt and put out a nice beach chair and sit out there, have a good time. Well, I could do that, but I'd be going against the truth. It was because it's not true. My mind is not in accord with the reality, as my body would very quickly tell me as I experience hypothermia and freeze to death. My body, sometimes the physical world has to kind of give us a kick in the pants and tell us when what we think is maybe not in conformity with what is real. Truth. So all people, or God wants people to know the truth. This is not an eternal shell game. Like God's like, okay, I'll let the Hindus believe what they want there, and let the Muslims believe what they want there, and let the animists believe what they want there, and just keep moving the shell around all the time, and keep all those human beings confused about who I really am, because it doesn't really matter anyways. I don't exist. Anyways, but what is true? You want to bring your mind into contact with something as it really is. Otherwise, it's not truthful. It's not, just interesting because I looked up the word in Old English, the word true, which is an Old English word, means faithful. It should be a faithful representation of the way things really are. If God doesn't exist, if it's not true, I would want to know that, because I wouldn't want my intellect to be believing something that's not in accord with what's real. If my mind is in accordance with the reality that is outside my mind, if there is a reality outside your mind, but that's the question for the philosophers in philosophy class, could just all be holograms or a brain in a vat. If my mind is thinking the same as the reality that is outside my mind, then I possess truth. So God doesn't want men and women to keep just like making it up. When it comes to ultimate reality, he wants to show what is the truth. God wishes all people, all men and women, to be saved. He's not, whoops, turn the page. Now, for this, for the Catholic Church and for Christianity, Jesus is that truth. And Jesus is a religious figure, which means there's a belief element. If you don't believe he's the truth, if you don't believe in who Jesus says he is or who the Catholic Church says he is, he's not the truth for you. Okay, and then none of this doesn't make any sense, or it's not persuasive. But it doesn't have to be persuasive. I'm just describing how the Catholic Church views other religions. And to understand how it comes to its belief about other religions, you have to understand the logic behind it. How is it coming to that belief? It's not just coming at it from nowhere. The belief is that Jesus Christ is somehow God, and that if he's God, the source of truth, then the fullness of truth resides in him. And so he can speak with an authority that no purely human religion can. Okay, Nostra Aetate. The first words in Latin of this document are Nostra Aetate, hence it's called Nostra Aetate. But its longer title is the Declaration on the Relation, or you could also say the attitude, but I was just looking at it yesterday. What was the Latin word? Has the sense of, well, the condition of the church, you might say. The orientation of the church to the non-Christian religions. Not in the sense that the church is just one of humanity's many religions, and it's just relative to those, and is talking about them from the vantage point of the Catholic Church. No, it's the church is somehow unique, or the Christianity is somehow unique from the other religions of the world, which are based on human desires and wishes. That doesn't mean they're untrue. It just means that they don't have truth, or they don't even have, doesn't mean they don't have good people in them. It's just the focus is different. So not relation of the church to non-Christian religions in the sense that we're all in the same boat. And now I'm the church looking at you, Hinduism, and Hinduism and the church are looking now at Buddhism. No. Christ is not on par with these other religious belief systems. It's more in the sense of an orientation. How should we look at them? And this was a groundbreaking document in that sense. It was, number one, it was the first statement of the Catholic Church on the status of other religions. I mean, for 2,000, not that the Catholic Church hadn't lived with other religions over 2,000 years, but really there wasn't seen to be any real need to have an official kind of point of view. I mean, there was a point of view, but nothing officially stated in a document, and this was the first one. Hence, it's groundbreaking. It's also unique and groundbreaking in the sense that previously the view was very negative. It was an outsider's view, kind of like you find like in the Book of Wisdom or Baruch, where there's generally a negative presentation of the non-Jewish religions. And that's how the church kind of viewed non-Christian religions. They were negative. They were seen negatively. They were seen from the attitude of they were false. They were deceptive pathways. They were in error. And maybe even the creations of the devil, if you want to go take the full road of negativity. But Nostra Aetate, the bishops challenged this view. They walked it back. They're like, wait a second. This has been the assumption for a long, long time. But, does experience really bear this out? Yes, there are things in other religions that the Catholic Church would certainly not agree with or believe or think that these religions are presenting a valid or persuasive view of ultimate reality. But is this endlessly negative appraisal of always having to say, well, they're wrong, right? okay, yeah, okay, there are good people who are Hindus, but you know they're still wrong, right? You know, this unremitting, endless need to be negative is itself not exactly true. It doesn't exactly fit the reality, because as you study religions, you find that there is truth there. Do not kill, don't steal, don't take what's not yours, don't tell falsehoods, stuff like that. Those are true, whether they're said by a Christian, a Jew, an atheist, whatever. And they're also good people. They're people just trying to live and trying to be nice to other people and help other people. So there were assumptions that had been made that people were not really seeking the truth or trying to live a good life. And just the experience of Christians, of people of other religions, the bishops were like, that's just not the case. You know, the more and more we know about other religions, we see that there is truth and beauty and goodness in them and in these people. So what does that mean? So instead of seeing them negatively as examples of human error or perversion, perverting the truth, Nostra Aetate sees human religions positively as examples of humanity's deep yearnings for God. So you might notice, for example, in Nostra Aetate number 2, not in this quotation that I have here on the PowerPoint, but what comes before it, you know, they give a kind of a little, very brief summary of certain religions. They mention Hinduism, they mention Buddhism, and then they kind of have like a general statement, which I guess could include like native indigenous religions. Who knows? It's such a general statement about human religiosity. But the thing that's important about these statements is that the tone is different. Okay, these religions are summarized in a positive, you might say, fair and respectful way. And there's no hint of having to say, yeah, but they're still not the full truth. They're still wrong. Well, maybe, to some extent, maybe. Well, they're just, well, anyways. There's no need to like beat a negative dead horse. Okay, you know that you don't believe, if you're a Catholic, you don't believe in Hinduism, otherwise you'd be a Hindu. Okay, but you don't have to keep pointing it out. But a positive view does not change. This change in a positive view is not a change in church teaching or doctrine, like somehow Jesus is being relativized. They're just trying to say, well, you know, because we can recognize there is truth and holiness, goodness in other religions, in the people, that doesn't mean that, you know, we're somehow saying that Jesus is not, as it says below, the way, the truth, and the life. While honoring the truth that might be amongst human beings and might even be enshrined in their religions, the church is still bound by its own commitment to Jesus to proclaim who he said he was, that he's called himself the way, the truth, and the life, not a way or a truth to follow or a life to live. No, Jesus never had any kind of self-esteem problem. When he talked about himself, he was always very clear that he was numero uno in the group, you know. And so as followers and believers, it makes sense if they say the church says it's Christian, then it's following Jesus Christ and believes in him. The last reading was a summary, actually. Well, I shouldn't say a summary, but just it is in a way, a good summary of Christian doctrine or church doctrine as it existed in the most recent times from this man, St. John Paul II, who was Pope from 1979. He succeeded, well, no, that's not true. It was John Paul I, who only lasted a month, and then his heart gave out and he died. And then this guy, John Paul II, was elected, and then nobody could get rid of him. The dude just didn't want to die. I don't know what it is about Polish people. Maybe it's all that rye bread. I don't know. The pierogies, they're healthy. I don't know. Pierogies, sour cream, onions. I don't know. Nevertheless, Polish Pope, John Paul II. And I had you read from a statement he made to a group called the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the CDF. What is the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith? Basically, it's an office in the church bureaucracy. Actually, it's an office of the Pope himself as leader of the Catholic Church. I don't have to write it out because it's on the document. It says addressed to the congregation, the members of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, or just simply called the CDF. And as you can probably tell from the name, Doctrine of the Faith, it assists the Pope. The purpose of this office is to assist the Pope in doctrinal matters, addressing matters of teaching and belief that come up throughout the world, and crafting responses to them if they're serious, if maybe something, some erroneous ideas are going around that there needs to be a correction on, or if there's some matter that the Pope feels that he, as the teacher of the church, needs to speak on. Okay, and so every now and then, well, I shouldn't say every now and then. There's more. It's more regular than that. The Pope will meet with the members of this office to talk about what they're up to. And when he's doing that, he usually gives a small little talk, a small speech, which is what he did. And if you read it, you know that the first section is him referring to the recent questions they were dealing with a certain document that they issued later. But that's, again, another cup of coffee. Yes, I see the time, and I don't want to get into, I'll complete this, I'll finish this later on Thursday, and then we'll go into Hinduism. So bring the bhajis, baby. Or pakora. Hey, it's me. I just had a quick question. Do you know who handles the technology in the classroom? Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll give them a call, because this is, I think, what now, the second week or so, and yeah, this computer it's not doing well. Yeah, it's freezing up on me. It's not opening. It's not recognizing my USB. It's all sorts of nonsense.